When I was 21, I spent a lot of time alone at my parents' house, especially during the summers. We lived by a small pond that stretched out into our backyard. Across the pond was a park, and the neighbors, though spaced out, were part of a well-to-do neighborhood. It was an upscale area compared to the rest of town, and the houses sat on large properties. I've moved out since then, but back in college, I often found myself at home alone because my parents owned multiple properties. It was one of those random summer nights, though I can't recall whether it was a weekday or a weekend. I was in the sunroom, my favorite place during the summer, watching a show. The breeze that flowed in through the open windows made it the coziest spot in the house. I was sitting on the couch near the corner window when I heard splashing outside. At first I dismissed it, thinking it was just geese or ducks. They often fought in the pond, making a racket. But after a while, the sound became more persistent. Curious, I turned down the volume on the TV and listened more closely. The splashing sounded too heavy to be caused by birds. It was rhythmic, almost deliberate sounding, like somebody was swimming. I opened the door to the sunroom and stepped onto the deck, squinting into the pitch-black night. Then I heard a low humming in a man's voice, coming from the pond, mingling with the splashing sounds. Someone was in the water and they were trespassing. Each house around the pond owned a specific portion of it, and this person clearly didn't belong. I stepped back inside and turned on the deck lights, hoping to catch a glimpse of whoever it was. As the backyard lit up, the splashing stopped immediately. The humming, too, ceased. Whoever it was, they had seen me. For a moment, I wondered if it could have been one of the neighbors taking a late-night swim. But that thought just didn't sit right. No one ever swam in that pond. And even if it was a neighbor, I wasn't about to confront them. I turned off the lights and locked the door behind me, texting my brother away at college about the strange encounter. He didn't reply right away, and I tried not to let the situation freak me out, though it was hard to focus on my show after that. Every now and then, I glanced out the window, but the backyard was a void of darkness. The TV was still on in the background, but I didn't realize how much light from the screen would make me visible to anyone outside. Then I heard a noise on the deck. My heart raced as I scrambled to find the remote and turn off the TV. As soon as the room went black, I could hear heavy breathing right outside of my windows. Someone was there, standing just on the other side of the glass, inhaling deeply and exhaling slowly. I froze, lying flat on the couch, trying to make myself as small and invisible as possible. After a few agonizing seconds of silence, a deep voice from outside the window broke the stillness. "I see you." The blood drained from my face, my stomach lurching. I didn't know whether to respond or stay silent, so I blurted out, "Paul, is that you?" Paul was one of our neighbors, and I clung to the hope that maybe it was just him messing around. But the man outside didn't answer. Instead, I heard slow footsteps moving away, the soft slapping of bare feet on the deck. As the sound faded into the night, I stayed frozen in place, too terrified to move. After an eternity, the thought finally crossed my mind to check the doors. I jumped off the couch and sprinted to the front door, making sure it was locked, then hurried to check the side entrance. It, too, was secure. Relieved but still on edge, I texted my family, telling them what happened. My dad called and told me to turn on the backyard lights and check if anyone was still out there. Be the man of the house, he said, urging me to protect the place. Grabbing a knife from the kitchen, I reluctantly stepped outside, scanning the yard. At first, everything seemed clear. But then I saw the bare, wet footprints on the deck. They had half-dried by then, but they were unmistakable. I followed the trail cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. As I rounded the corner of the deck, I saw something that still haunts me. It was the top of someone's head, just their eyes and forehead, peeking over the edge, watching me. They must have heard me coming, and they were waiting. For a second we locked eyes, and then they disappeared. I ran back inside and called 911. When the police arrived, they swept the property but found no one. After they left, I shut every window in the house and ran the air conditioning just to feel safer. The next morning, I was relieved to see the sunlight streaming through the windows. I never saw that man again, and we still don't know who it was or why they were there that night. It was a normal Friday afternoon at my high school. I was walking down the hallway with my friend Emma as she talked about God knows what. I was just trying to get through the day because honestly, I had a lot to deal with at both home and school. My foster parents weren't the nicest people, to say the least. As we walked past the lunchroom, I suddenly had to use the bathroom. I asked Emma if she needed to go, but she said no and that she would wait outside for me. I went into the bathroom and immediately noticed that no one else was there. I thought it was strange because out of all the bathrooms in the school, this one was usually the busiest. But I shrugged it off and went into a stall. A few seconds after I sat down, I heard the bathroom entrance door open and shut abruptly. Someone had entered, but I didn't hear them move after that. Maybe it was someone hiding from a teacher or something, which wasn't uncommon. I went about my business, stood up, buttoned my jeans, and read some of the writing on the walls, just random quotes and rants about teachers. As I was leaving the stall, I saw Emma rushing out through the bathroom door. After washing my hands, I caught up to her outside and asked her what's up. She looked at me wide-eyed and asked, "Who was that with you?" I had no idea what she was talking about. But she wasn't joking. She promised she wasn't trying to scare me. She explained that she had come into the bathroom because she realized she did need to go after all. But when she saw me leaving the stall, there was someone right behind me. She got freaked out and left immediately, not wanting to witness whatever was happening. I reiterated that I had been the only one in there and didn't see or hear anyone else. Yes, I had heard someone enter the bathroom, but they never used a stall, and I just assumed they were hiding from a teacher. That's when Emma told me that no one else had come near the bathroom door until she walked in. I don't believe in the paranormal, but this made my stomach sink. I told the office administrator what had happened, but she brushed it off. She suggested that Emma was just messing with me. But when she looked me in the eyes with a dead serious expression and told me exactly what she saw, I had no choice but to believe her. Something was in that bathroom with me. Emma saw it. And neither one of us will forget that day. This happened a long time ago, when I was renting a small house in the town where I got my first real big kid job. It was a one-story house with 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and just enough living space for myself and the occasional guest. I had been living there for a few weeks and everything was fine. The landlord, who I'll call Michelle, was really friendly and understanding. But I'll skip unnecessary details and get to the point. Something very weird started happening a few weeks after I lived there. One regular work night, I got a knock at the door. I walked over, stood on the other side, and called out, "Who is it?" No one responded. I didn't open the door. No one should have been knocking that late at night. The next morning, after getting ready for work, I was about to leave when I opened the front door and saw a big note taped to the storm door. It read, "Hello, beautiful." Immediately, I remembered the knocking from the night before. I crumpled the note in disgust and tossed it in the trash, hoping it was a one-off incident. But that night, the knocking came a little earlier, while I was cooking dinner. I walked over to the door, but I didn't say anything. I just stood there, listening. There was no peephole or glass to look through, and the storm door didn't lock, so there was no way for me to see who was there without opening the door, which was not going to happen. This was the second night in a row, and I began to worry this was some sort of stalker situation. I called my parents to ask for advice. They didn't really know what to say. My dad is a retired police officer, and he told me that the cops wouldn't be able to help unless they caught the person in the act. He told me not to go outside late at night and to avoid answering the door, and if it persisted, he would come down and stay with me for a few days. I followed his advice. The next morning, the first thing I did was check the storm door for another note. Part of me died inside when I saw yet another note stuck to the glass. "I like to watch you," this one said. I took a picture of it with my phone and sent it to my family and the landlord. Michelle acted completely shocked and assured me that she didn't have any stalkers and that she was in a long-term relationship. After work that day, I left a note on the door that read, "If you're looking for Michelle, she does not live here. If you continue to come here, I will call the police." With that, I actually felt a sense of comfort, and I thought it would put an end to the situation. I spent every waking minute of that night in anxiety, waiting for another knock at the door. But to my relief, it never came. I went to sleep peacefully, thinking my note had worked. The next morning, I went to remove the note I had left, but when I grabbed it, I realized it was a new one. It said, "I'm not looking for Michelle. I'm looking for you." Then it repeated what the previous note said. "I like watching you." I immediately sent the note to my dad, who packed a bag and drove out right away. He was at my house by the time I got home from work. That day at work was rough because I couldn't think of anything except this horrible situation. I even started to wonder if someone at the office was behind it, like this creepy guy Fernando who gave me weird vibes. That night, my dad and I decided to call the police together. We thought it might be a good idea to call later in the evening, hoping that whoever was leaving the notes might be lurking around. We wanted them to see the police presence. When the officer arrived, my dad explained the situation. After the officer left with his report, my dad sat on the front stoop for hours, even after I went to sleep. But the person didn't return that night. Soon after, I moved out, and Michelle was completely understanding. Whoever had been stalking me at that house didn't follow me to my new place, so I don't think it was someone from work. I guess I'll never know who was knocking on my door.